Yeah. Bills Mafia. Don Brown. Yeah. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. It's the Mafia, I'm with the Buffalo Bills. It's the Mafia, you know I'm rocking with the Bills. Hey, who you reppin'? What's your team? Who you reppin'? What's your team? You know I'm reppin' for my team. I got that talent on my team. Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, can you catch it? Can you? Trade day is like a mask, you not catching anything.
Folks, welcome into a brand new episode of the Crowd Assist podcast presented by Trainwreck Sports. As always, Wake here with Meerkat, Kevin Masari, Sari, not sorry. Every time I get in my head about that, I psych myself out a little bit. Got Mark Schofield here. That's Pulpit, USA Today, talking quarterbacks as well. Got a lot to get to, but first, got to remind you guys we are sponsored by our good friends at Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case. What's your outlet? George Irvin Boulevard in Depew. Loganberry seltzers, wine, spirits, tequila, anything you need for Bills season. We got a preseason home game this weekend, so make sure you get there. The place to buy a case. Talk about this game and all the games in the regular season. And during the regular season, obviously, we'll be seeing the Patriots twice. So we had to get Mark Schofield on here for one last time before the season starts. Obviously, first, Mark, thank you for being here. And let me be the first one to congratulate you based on Mac Jones' practice today on his future induction into the NFL Hall of Fame.
Wait, they've already sized him up for a gold jacket. We've got sculptors working on the bust. I mean, it's the era of unbridled optimism now in New England. Now, guys, it's great to be back. I know we're going to talk about Mac, so we can dive right into it if you want, but it does look like that door has been opened for Mac Jones to now be a potential week one starting quarterback. Obviously, there's still time for that decision to be made, but this quarterback sort of battle has taken an interesting turn in the past, say, 24, 48 hours.
Yeah. And part of that is because of what's going on with Cam Newton too. So maybe talk a little bit about that, and then talk about how Mac has looked overall. Because I feel like in the first preseason game, a lot of people's first impression of him, it looked like he was running a vanilla Patriots offense: get the ball out quick, be efficient, don't make a mistake. What have you seen, behind the scenes that maybe people outside of New England might not have seen?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's looked solid. I mean, he's made mistakes at times, and he'd be the first to tell you that. Josh McDaniels will be the first to tell you that as well. There's going to be a learning curve. What he's seen so far, both in the offense that they've called for him, has, like you said, Wake, been a little bit vanilla. He's also seen some vanilla looks on the defensive side of the ball as well from whether it was Washington, although they did get him into that game early, the first preseason game, to try to get him against some 1s and 2s rather than 3s and 4s. He saw mostly 3s and 4s against Philadelphia. They pretty much sat their starters last week. So, we'll see how it looks this weekend. And also we'll keep an eye on the joint practices too, because they're joint practices right now with the Giants. And so you're seeing now with Cam sidelined due to the COVID protocols, now Mac is your number one guy in practice. And so he's getting run with the ones against the Giants ones. And so this is an opportunity for him to sort of take that job. He's looked good in those moments. He's looked good both in practice at times and in the stuff that they've asked him to run. They've put him in some situations. They've tried to manufacture some scenarios for him, both against Washington, against Philadelphia. They opened up in the second half with him running the 2-minute because they wanted him to get some experience running that. And when they did that against Washington, that made me think it was more of a quarterback battle than maybe they were letting on. When they wanted to see him in that scenario, when they wanted to manufacture some game-type settings for him, that made me think that, look, maybe they're really trying to give this guy a true look. So the door's open now. I thought Cam had looked pretty good too. I thought Cam looked really good Thursday night against Philadelphia. It looked about as comfortable as perhaps we've seen him in New England's offense, in the huddle, in the pocket. He looked calm, comfortable, worked through reads, made good decisions. So, if you were to ask me Friday morning, who's their week one starter, I would have said, yeah, it's still Cam. The question might be, how long does he hold on to that job? Now, with Cam's situation, if Mac continues, he reportedly had a very good practice today against the Giants. If that continues, what was, I thought, maybe 80-20 is now much more of a toss-up.
Yeah, and, obviously a lot of new faces outside of just Mac Jones on the offense. New receivers, 2 new tight ends. Rhamondre Stevenson's a guy making a lot of noise in the preseason. Yeah. This is a very new look New England Patriots offense, new look team to be completely honest. So, how is Mac Jones maybe set up for success as a rookie based on the guys they brought in? Do you think they did a good job of building around him for his rookie year?
Yeah, I mean, look, they built an offense that was designed, regardless of who the quarterback was, to run the football and to throw play action off of that. And so whether it was Cam Newton, whether it was Mac Jones, like that's what they were going to do offensively. And so, regardless of who wins the starter job, this is a team that's set up to run the football, to throw off of play action looks as a result, to be very much, I'd say, almost the early Tom Brady offense, right? If you think back to
that's the first thing I thought in the first preseason game is that he looks like Tom Brady back there, not like a Hall of Famer, but like he's just running that same style of offense.
Yeah, and look, I think you watch, what they've done so far in Wake. I think it's exactly right. Like they want to minimize what the quarterback has to do. They want to win with the defense, win ball control, win run game, play action, and things like that. Now, look, does a team like that, a team structured like that, can it really be competitive in today's NFL? This isn't 2003, 2004 when the game was tilted towards defenses, when you had the non-contact rules and the pass interference rules and things like that. It's a different era. Can teams win 17, 14 rock fights consistently? That's a question that we might see answered from New England and maybe a couple of other teams this year. But that's how they're built to run, regardless of Mac or Cam. Now, look, they're excited, I will tell you guys, about 21 of 22 positions. It's just that the 22nd position happens to be quarterback in a quarterback-driven league, in a quarterback-driven era. Like, they like what they have in place around the quarterback position. Do they think between Cam and Mac, what they've seen so far, it'll be better than last year at the quarterback position? I think they think so, but that still remains to be seen. Judging off of stuff against vanilla defenses, vanilla looks, 3s and 4s, maybe it's hard to say that definitively. But they feel pretty good about the rest of the roster. It's Mac Jones, Cam Newton. Will they get consistent quarterback play like they need?
Yeah, Mark. And if you look at the roster, I mean, you just saw Sony Michel just get traded to the Rams for a 5th and a 6th. I mean, fairly decent value both ways, probably. Both teams will probably tell you that was fine. I mean, obviously they wouldn't have done it, but I would have liked the Bills to be involved in that with what I think their running back situation is right now. But how do you feel about that? What is the reasoning for that? Do you think that it's a Rhamondre Stevenson thing, Damien Harris? What exactly did that mean? And was he just out of favor? Was it just kind of a Bill Belichick? What does that mean for the offensive roster? And how does that affect as we talk about the quarterback?
Yeah, Kevin. I mean, I think it's a situation where they had a surplus at the position. They really like, obviously, Damien Harris. There's a reason why everybody's looking at Damien Harris as, if you're going to say there's a running back one in New England, that would be the guy. Even if Sony Michel made this team, Damien Harris seemed to be sort of asserted himself as the guy coming out of Alabama. And I know we've talked about this before when I've been on with you guys. They like what he could do in pass protection. They like what he can do as a receiver. It was really interesting if you watch that Thursday night game, and if you've seen New England this preseason, they tried to get Sony Michel involved more in the passing game, which is something they haven't done. And that was a sign that, hey, we're not doing this for us. Like, we're showing the other 31 teteams, like, this guy can be a receiver out of the backfield. Hey, if you need a running back that can catch, like, he can do it. And so I think that was kind of a Michel showcase in a sense. We know what James White is going to be for this team. He's going to be their receiving back. He's going to be somebody that you'll see in 2 running back packages where you might flex him out wide. We know what James White brings to the table. I don't need to rehash that stuff. But, Kevin, you mentioned Rhamondre Stevenson. There is a lot of excitement about him. And there were a lot of Patriots fans that thought, or people covering the team that thought he might get the sort of Foxborough flu, redshirt season. But now with Michel moved to the Rams, you might see more of him. And where I think he comes into play is short yardage situations for New England. 1st and goal from the 4 situations for New England. Past couple of years, even when Tom Brady was in New England, Patriots would get 1st and goal at the 6, and you're like, all right, when does Gostowski come onto the field? Because they can't get the ball into the red zone. They can't convert in short yardage situations. They didn't have the guy they could just hand it to and get you 3 yards when you needed 3 yards. Stevenson can give them that. but he also moves extremely well for somebody of his size. He has very good footwork. He had a long touchdown run against Washington. If you watch him in Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley loved to get him involved as a receiver out of the backfield. They can do some different things with him. I'm excited about some potential Stevenson White 21 or 20 personnel packages, some creative things they could do with the two of them. And so I think this is a nod to Stevenson and how they've been impressed by him. They feel that they don't need to redshirt him. Foxborough flew him. They can give him run now as a contributor, as a rookie. So I think it speaks to, Kevin, the fact that they had bodies at the position. They felt that, look, they could acquire something. The other thing to keep in mind is this. The fine minds over at the Draft Network, Bills fans, you guys don't have to worry about the draft until those days are gone for you guys. But they released their top 100 on Monday night, and I was talking to Kyle Krabs about it. He said, look, right now, and obviously it's early, this seems like it's not a very great class at the top, but it's deep. There's going to be value on day 2 and day 3. And if the NFL feels that way, if the Patriots feel that way, then getting a fourth rounder, that might turn into something, say, next April, next May in this next draft class. It's just something to keep in mind. It's very early. It may end up flipped where it's top heavy and the depth is thin, but right now, maybe the league feels that way too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Meerkat. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, I was just going to say it's a pretty obvious situation to where New England seems to always have really good running back play. And I'm really interested to see where that unit goes from here. And I had some. I always never liked to see Sonny Michel line up on the other side. I don't know why. I never he was crazy. I always thought he could though, and he had some good games against the Bills in his New York or in his New England tenure.
Yes, his rookie year, that late season game, the year that they went on to win the Super Bowl. I mean, a lot of people have already said, this is the world we live in. Everything's done in 280 characters, and everything's done in the moment.
Yes.
And so there's already people saying that, look, this was a bust in New England. It was a bad draft pick. And, maybe you could make that case. You could look a couple picks later and see Nick Chubb. You could look one pick later and see Lamar Jackson and say, hey, hindsight being what it is, how would New England's offense look right now if either one of those guys were in New England? And you can certainly do that. But you also look at the end of his rookie season, right? When Brady was dinged up and it was obvious they struggled to throw the ball. I remember that game against Buffalo late season. They couldn't throw the ball, but they had a consistent run game with Sonny Michel behind James Devlin, scored 6 touchdowns down the stretch, the lone touchdown in Super Bowl 53. Is that enough to warrant pick 31 overall? Maybe, maybe not. But I'll leave that to others. I think the fact that they got something in return, that Michel was dinged up at times. They added a 4th round pick. He did have some moments. He did have some moments against Buffalo. I understand why there might be some excitement that he's now in the NFC West rather than behind, Mac Jones or Cam Newton. I understand that. Whether he was a good pick or a bust, I'll leave that up to others.
Meerkat and I do the train wreck fantasy stuff over here. So obviously, it's just from a fantasy perspective.
Please don't ask me this question. Don't ask me this question.
Not going to ask about fantasy rankings.
I don't know who the go-to running back is in New England. Believe me.
That. Not because they were saying it at the beginning of camp. They did say Damien Harris could be the workhorse back. That's what he looked like. But not even just in terms of RB1. There are just a lot of faces, a lot of mouths to feed on this offense. Is there any one guy you think that this offense could really run through, or is it really just going to be a play the matchups game by game kind of thing?
I mean, you guys, Wake and Meerkat, the fact that you guys do this fantasy stuff, but you also have a Buffalo Bills eye on the Patriots. You know that they love to go week by week, matchup by matchup, situation by situation, generally speaking. But Jacoby Myers, if you're going to say, look, it's late of a redraft or you've got an opportunity to acquire him perhaps in Dynasty, you might want to keep an eye on Jacoby Myers because he's consistently getting open. We've seen that all throughout camp. We've seen that in the 2 preseason games. We saw that today, seeing some of the practice footage where he's consistently getting open against Giants receivers. He has a good relationship both with Cam and with Mac. Whether it's Cam under center or Mac under center, they feel comfortable targeting Jacoby Myers in game, in practice, 7-on-7 and all that stuff. So if you're in a situation where you can, draft, roster Jacoby Myers, I think that's something that's worthwhile. I'm not saying he's like one of the best receivers in the game. I'm not saying he's the best receiver on the team, but he has an ability to get open and he has that quarterback background, right? Where he played quarterback coming up. He was recruited as a quarterback at NC State. He knows what it means on the other end of throws, how to get open, how timing and rhythm and all that stuff plays into offensive play structure. And so, Aguilar is going to get some catches. We know when healthy, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry are going to be a big factor. But as far as like one player to sort of keep an eye on, Jacoby Myers might be that guy.
It's interesting. Definitely interesting. We spent a lot of time on the offense, and we got to until about 5:30. So, Meerkat, did you have something to add in there?
Yeah, no, Mark, I just bouncing off a receiver there. I had a question about just what you think is going to be happening with N'Keal Harry. I mean, he's a guy pretty touted coming out of college. He took him in the last pick of the first round. I was jealous of the pick. I'm not going to lie. He was someone I was going to be afraid of facing twice this season, I thought. And then his usage, little team issues here and there, his agent at the beginning of the offseason requesting the trade, then, going into camp fine. Now he has the shoulder injury. What do you think his future is going to be? Are they going to try to keep him on this roster still and maybe manipulate the new IR rules to keep him on it? Or are they just going to cut him if they can't find a trade partner since they haven't already?
Yeah, I mean, Mick, I think they're going to find a way to keep him on the roster. And something that I keep in the back of my mind is the fact that Henry's dinged up right now. Smith, you might have injury concerns at some point. I know they want to run the 2 tight end offense. If you're in a situation where 12 personnel 2 tight ends has to become like 11 with a big slot type receiver, that's N'Keal Harry. That's a role that he could perhaps fill. And what's the market for a guy that's requested a trade, has never quite fit in, and now is dinged up? Like, it might be hard to move him. Like, what would you, generally speaking, give up in a trade to acquire N'Keal Harry right now as another organization? Even if you're really thin at receiver, you might say, here's a conditional 6th. And would New England, move a former first-round pick for that? Maybe not. Although maybe Sony Michel, that news makes you think about it a little bit differently. But to your question, I think they find a way to keep him. I think they find ways to get him involved. His tenure in New England so far is a great example that the Brady Circle of Trust is a real thing. You want to see when the N'Keal Harry situation went south, go back to a certain Sunday night game down in Houston when N'Keal Harry didn't quite fight for the football on a slant route and got picked and almost picked 6th. And then he was sort of persona non grata in the Tom Brady New England Patriots offense. The Tom Brady Circle of Trust is real. Both Newton has gassed him up a lot. Mac Jones has targeted him sometimes. He got hurt on a throw from Mac Jones. And so, both quarterbacks now seem to trust him. Does the coaching staff trust him to an extent? That's probably still remains to be seen.
Someone who I definitely think has earned the trust of the coaches so far in his first offseason with the Patriots is Matthew Judon. I am terrified, personally, of just the idea of playing him only 2 times a year. That alone is too many times. Just the Patriots defense, it's always going to be a tough unit when it's coached by Bill Belichick. Additions of Judon, I hear cornerback depth might be a question. So, if you're one strength and one weakness of the Patriots defense, go.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the strength is the defensive front. And Judon, that acquisition is certainly a big part of that. Getting Dante Hightower back is also part of that, because Hightower, in addition to what he means to that defense from calls, from being basically a coach on the field, to the situational blitzes, the stuff they do with it both in the A-gap and off the edge, they will have some packages where you've got overload looks or Judon to one side, Hightower to another, Van Noy back. They like doing some stuff with him in the pass rushing scheme. The emergence of Christian Barmore, who they traded up for in the second round. I said before the draft, I would not have been surprised if he was the pick at 15. They got him in the 30s, but that was.
I had him going mid-20s. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was.
He's a force.
He's a force, Meerkat. And look, it was a thin position group, and he was inarguably the best guy at that position. It's just a Belichick style move, the marketed efficiency. When he's been healthy, he's impressed. He's got run with the ones. And so the defensive front, I think overall, Josh Uche, Chase Winovich, they like what they have up front. But wait, you mentioned cornerback depth, right? Now, you look at the roster on paper, Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, that's a pretty solid 1-2 at corner. Gilmore's been out. J.C. Jackson now has to slide into the 1. We haven't seen Jonathan Jones. Jawan Williams has struggled at times. Michael Jackson, who they acquired at a trade, has struggled at times. Jalen Mills has been up and down. You watch that game against the Eagles, Devonta Smith's open all the time. I mean, he's open left and right against Williams, against Jackson. Maybe throws weren't completed, but that's a factor, I think, more of him and Flacco not being on the same page. So up front, defensively, they like what they have. Cornerback depth, though, that's a question mark right now. Now, maybe Gilmore would come back. J.C. Jackson slides to corner 1B, and it goes from there, and it gets a little bit better. But right now, secondary depth, particularly cornerback depth, is an issue.
Yeah, it's interesting. How about Ronnie Perkins? I mean, he was a guy I kind of like coming out third round. Anything there? Is he kind of buried with the other names there?
He's, Kevin, I was kind of intrigued by him. I liked it as a selection when they drafted him. There's depth up front, so it's a numbers game. But it wouldn't surprise me if they find a way to sort of squeeze him on the roster, because we all know Bill Belichick, look, when you compare pass rush with coverage, like that's what he wants to build. He's somebody that you can carve out a situational role for, but it might be a tough numbers game. And it might decide, like, if they keep one more offensive lineman, Perkins might be sort of in a tough spot. Maybe he's your Foxborough flu IR type candidate. But he's had some flashes, Kevin. Don't get me wrong. It's just, they've got a deep group up front with a lot of guys and maybe not enough slots for them all.
Yeah, for sure. What's a name we should be looking out for as, watching the Patriots? Something you've seen covered, young player, maybe not. There's an offensive lineman. Everyone knows who Stephon Gilmore is. But,
Kyle Duggar.
Okay.
And he was in a fantastic situation last year because we expected it to be a caddy season for him behind Patrick Chung. But when Chung opts out, he has to play. And you expect, athletic but raw, used mostly as a box safety at Division II Lenore Ride. Like, that's how they'll try to use him. They used him as a half field safety, as a single high safety. And, watch that game against the Eagles. Watch him in the red zone read Joe Flacco as a single high safety and break up a slot fade, which could have been a touchdown if he didn't read that play perfectly. They really trust this kid. They look at him as like he could be, Devin McCourty on first down, and he could be Patrick Chung on second down. He could be a hybrid linebacker on third down. They're using him in a bunch of different ways. He told us at the start of camp, look, I didn't have a good year last year. I thought he was way too hard on himself given the situation he was thrust into. I think he's going to be a big factor for them, not just this season, the different ways they can use him, but maybe that Devin McCourty replacement down the road.
Yeah, if you get that kind of play out of Kyle Duggar, that would kind of be the cherry on the sundae on a healthy.
The trendy Patriots guy here in Buffalo too. He was a guy that was really talked about for the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at his draft cycle when we saw him down at the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. Him and Jeremy Chin, it was like, whoa, these two kids can really play. These two small school safeties. Then they both go to the combine. It's like, all right, you're not getting these guys in the third round. Like, you're going to have to get them in the second. We saw the Patriots do, with Kyle Duggar in the second, Jeremy Chin in the second. Like, those two kids, you knew down in Mobile, you're going to have to draft these guys early.
And so overall outlook for like this season, like, what's win totals? You don't have to give your record prediction, but just like, look, a standard goal, like,
I think from a Patriots fan's perspective, like, they should be competitive in the division. Do I think they can win the division? Yeah, it's going to take a lot to break their way. Do I think they're the favorites of the division? Absolutely not. Like, I still look at Buffalo, everything they're bringing back, the growth and development of Josh Allen. Like, I still look at the Buffalo Bills like, yeah, that's the team to beat in the division with good reason. I look at Miami and look, Tua looks better. That's a team that just missed out on the playoffs last year. Like, these are three teams that should be competitive. I do think it's Buffalo in their division to win. I think the Patriots should contend for a playoff spot. Do I anticipate them like making some deep run into the playoffs and some magical, Brady and 01-02 type of run? No, I can't say that with any certainty. Absolutely not. It would take a miracle. It would take a lot of things to go wrong in a couple of other cities for that to happen. But I do think that, look, with the additions that they made, with the money they spent, they should be competitive this year. They should contend for a wild card spot this year. Maybe they catch fire down the stretch. Who knows? But looking at Miami, looking at Buffalo, heck, looking at the Jets, Zach Wilson's looked pretty good. Like, this is going to be a tough division and potentially a tough division for a couple of years to come.
Yeah, that's the fun part about it, is that this division is starting to look like it could shape up like an NFC West almost from a few years ago. Even from this year, to be completely honest, those could be two fun divisions to watch. Obviously you don't just cover the Pats. You do look at young quarterbacks, all quarterbacks really. So, we already talked Mac Jones, obviously, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, all these other quarterbacks that are going into their first years. Who do you think maybe could be, is there a shocker you think that could be rookie of the year? Or is Trevor Lawrence in your eyes like the clear, this is the guy this year?
Depends how soon Trey Lance starts. I mean, if Lance starts like week 1, week 2, week 3, like he's in a really good environment. And you heard before the draft when all the rumblings was, they traded up to 3 to get Mac Jones. Like, oh my goodness. A lot of people said like, maybe it's not Mac Jones, maybe it's Trey Lance, maybe it's Justin Fields, who knows? But whoever ends up in San Francisco is going to have the best career out of all 5 of these quarterbacks because Kyle Shanahan, that offense, that system, honestly. Like whether it's Jones, whether it's Fields, whether it's Lance, whether it's Kevin, like you're in a position to be extremely successful. Lance is now in that system, and what's also working for him, and the playbook's almost similar to what he was running at North Dakota State. Like he's very familiar with it. You could see it, how he's running it, how he's moving defenders with his eyes. I did a video breakdown of his game against the Chargers, and he's manipulated underneath defenders, single high safeties, all that stuff. Yeah, he was 5 of 14 in the first game. Like he's had, some struggles with completion percentage and things like that. But I think whenever he takes over, if it's early, he might be the guy that could sort of catch fire, give you that like Justin Herbert from a season ago, or whatever other rookie quarterback you want to look at. He's in a very good position to be successful early.
All right, well, go Meerkat. Sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I like Trey Lance. There is definitely interesting. It just depends if they give him the shot right off the bat because it still seems like it's Jimmy G, which confuses me. It's.
We
I
saw
get it,
today,
but I
right?
don't.
We saw today, right? When they had the media sessions and Shanahan's got the smile, like, yeah, I think I know who the starter is, and Garoppolo's got the smile. Now, look, Jimmy G is a very handsome man. We can all say that.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a good actor too. Good actor too, and so he's just smiling, but he knows it's going to be Lance. But it does seem like, look, they're leaning towards Jimmy G to start. How long does he hold on to it though? Maybe that's the bigger question.
And then sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Meerkat. No, finish it up.
I was just going to say, so we see how this is being handled, but it almost makes sense because obviously Lance is exciting stuff, but some people see him, might need a little bit more time to adjust to the NFL. But then a guy like Justin Fields, is that just Matt Nagy being Matt Nagy? Like, what is going on there? Is it because, they told Dalton he was going to be the starter when they signed him? Is it a respect to him thing? Or is it just another Nagy and Ryan Pace move there?
Maybe. I mean, the only thing I can think of, guys, is do you want to start Justin Fields on the road at the Rams against Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald? Like, is that your hesitation? At some point, though, the kid's going to have to play against good players. Like, and if it's week 1, week 2, week 4, whatever, you're going to have to face some guys on the other side of the ball that are pretty good at it. Now maybe they just think, look, we'll let Dalton have this, and we'll get him into the roster to start a lineup week 2, week 3, week 4. Maybe. I mean, I don't know. If it were me, I'd start Justin Fields. Like, I think he's ready. I think he's ready. But I'm just a dude sitting in his basement, drinking some Sunkist Zero. I'm not Matt Nagy. So
yeah, he looked struggling to me. I mean, against the Bills' second team. I mean, really, I didn't love what I saw from him in that game. I liked the pocket mobility. Kind of bailed out a little bit. The Bills let him do it. They were like, we're kind of playing our defense. We don't care if he runs for 15
I mean, there's certainly some hesitation. I can understand why from like a pocket management, from a protection standpoint. Like, look, we all saw him get ear hold. Like, you're gonna figure that stuff out pre-snap. Like, dude was right down on the line of scrimmage, capped by a safety. Like, you got to know that blitz is coming. You got to change those up. And so maybe they feel like from a protection standpoint, if he's not there from a pass protection, identification, of blitz situation, Aaron Donald is not the guy to try to figure that out against in week 1. Like, because they're going to throw some things at you. So, maybe that's the reason in there. But, if it were me, look, he's going to have to play Aaron Donalds of the world at some point. Might as well get it over early.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was missing some red zone throws too. And I think we gotta, before we let you go, we gotta ask you about our friends over in New York, and their quarterback situation. I know their defense just took big hits, losing like their entire front 7,
and the DB too, like last week.
I just we'll see what happens on the defensive side. But Zach Wilson, I mean, he was a guy I wasn't super thrilled with. I would have gone in many different ways, including the other 2 guys we've talked about. Great for the division. But, people said that about Josh Allen too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, he had a good preseason game. What do you think about him? I mean, is it someone we expect to see stuff from this season?
I wasn't necessarily high on Wilson either. I had him 3rd behind, Lawrence and then Fields, but I think he's in a good situation schematically, similar offensive conceptually to what he was doing last year at BYU. I think, look, he's looked good in the limited action, pretty good against the Giants with just a couple of his drives, looked good against the Packers again, backups, just a couple of drives. I do think they're set up for longer term success. I like what they're building with Elijah Moore. I like what they kind of have in place with Michael Carter, but I think it's a 2 to 3 year plan with the Jets rather than say Miami and arguably New England with the money that they've spent, and certainly the Bills coming off an AFC Championship game appearance. But I do think, look, my evaluation of Wilson is what it is, but he's looked pretty good right now. He looks like he has the potential to outplay the evaluation. I think Jets fans are hoping that he does, and we'll just see where it goes from there.
Well, Mark, there's no more where it'll go from here. This is going to be the end of the line for us today. So thank you for coming on the Crowd Assist podcast today. Remind everyone, if they want a taste of, some Patriots action, where can they find your work?
Well, guys, always a blast to come on. Thanks for having me. At Mark Schofield on Twitter, USA Today's Touchdown Wire, Scotia at Pat's Pulpit, QB Factory, a reboot over at Bleeding Green Nation with the incredibly talented Rachel Buffett. But on Twitter, at Mark Schofield, you can check me out, the social media stuff, the Steak 'em app, whatever you call the bird app.
Well, thank you so much, and they won't understand this reference, anyone listening, but congrats on protecting your house from that vicious mouse that you had to take care of before you got on here.
Yeah,
and thank you for protecting the mouse population by releasing him.
Yeah, look, it's a catch and release house here. That's all I'm going to say. It's a catch and release house.
Oh, well, we won't. Greg Rousseau won't be releasing Mac Jones in the backfield anytime, but I love the optimism here. Thanks so much, Mark. We'll talk
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark.
Thanks,
Love having you on.
Mark Schofield, Pat's Pulpit, and USA Today. Always a fantastic guest when we were able to get him on. But now you're stuck with just us three for the remainder of the show. We got about 15 to 20 minutes left. So obviously we're going to talk about the 53-man roster. Cut downs looming by next Tuesday, but we do have a preseason game ahead of then. Obviously big news today is the Bills signing Steven Sims, formerly of the Washington football team. And Kevin, this is obviously an Isaiah McKenzie replacement plan for the time being, right?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it seems like it. And maybe even a Stevenson replacement to the replacement. Assistant to the assistant regional manager is what it seems like in this case, because that's what he does. He returns kicks. He brought one to the house a couple of years ago, I remember. Yeah. He kind of does a little bit of everything. He's a burner, is in that mold, does muff punt. He kind of similar to when Isaiah McKenzie got waived in Denver for some of those issues. And that's kind of what you see in Sims. I don't think they signed Sims here, guys, with the idea that he's not going to make the roster. So it's really challenging now. It really does kind of put some stuff. Everyone's like, oh, he's a camp fodder. Nah, I don't believe that. I don't believe he's the type of player that's camp fodder. At the very worst, he's number one practice squad receiver at the very, very worst, if he clears waivers, because clearly he was wanted, a day after getting caught. The Bills called him up and said, come play here. He's not going to sign here if the Bills were like, well, we might have a spot at some point. He's going to be like, I need to get into a team, a receiver needy team. I'm going to Buffalo because it's, looking good to make the roster on a really high, powerful offense. So it isn't looking great, guys, for some of those names, those back-end roster guys. Kumaro is going to waltz onto the roster just out of pure skill set of what he does and health.
Exactly. Health is, Kumaro earned the spot earlier, and now he's keeping it based on his just availability, which is
right. And we know Beasley will be back, and we know that Gabe Davis will be back, but I mean, he's the third receiver right now in Kumaro. I mean, as of this minute. So I mean, it helps. I mean, does he get the rest this weekend? I don't know. He can't because there's not enough receivers.
Yeah, I thought Brandon Beane might be like flexing his muscles a little bit with this Kumaro stuff. Maybe trying to work a trade, trading him out of Buffalo.
He can't anymore.
Now he doesn't have that option. So no. I don't doubt that he was thinking it before. But staying on the news of Steven Sims signing with the Bills Meerkat, are you at all nervous about a drop off from McKenzie? Or I remember last year when I was tweeting about McKenzie, I called him an elite Swiss Army knife, and someone told me that was a bit of an oxymoron. So and they might be right. So if McKenzie misses the first 4 weeks of the season and we see Sims instead, how worried are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm not worried about it. I've been pretty adamant on the fact that I love Isaiah. He's a great presence in the locker room. He's done a ton for us and a great gadget guy to have, but he's not a priority guy on this team. Let's be real. Half of his stats last year, which, aren't that prevalent, are from one game. And he's a cool guy to bring in, give him the ball 3 times a game, maybe if it's whether a pass or out of the backfield or something. I don't think he's a vital part of this team, and I don't think the Bills think that either. You saw the deal they brought him back on. They dragged their feet bringing him back and then gave him like nothing. So like, I think like, I don't think it matters. I think this is exactly why Steven Sims was brought in. He's a guy who fills a very similar role. He's not as sure-handed as at McKenzie, which is a little concerning out of maybe like a return guy, if that's where they're looking at him for. But he's definitely athletic. He's fast. He, has a myriad of plays. Out on the Trainwreck Instagram, the one we posted today, he took like a 70-yard handoff out of the backfield for a touchdown against the Patriots. Like, he can do it all: return, catch, run it. Speedster. I think he can just easily fill in McKenzie's role because it's not that big of a role. Now, if he muffs a punt week 1 or something, he's returning back there and he muffs a punt, I'll be upset. But who's to say, McKenzie's not gonna, because we are already seen that. So exactly. So as far as being concerned about McKenzie being injured or Sims, I'm gonna call him Stims, Steven Sims. It would just work. If Stims, shows out in camp, I assume we're gonna see him in the next preseason game, even though he's just getting the playbook and stuff. Then I'm not worried about it. He's proven it. Just mistakes are what cost him in Washington, dropping balls and stuff, and plus they have a good receiving core. So we'll see what the future holds. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, 6 fumbles, 3 that he recovered himself. So does have a little bit of that issues. But guys, remember, he's young. He's not. Kind of feels like Steven Sims may be in the league, like, because he just kind of, if you play fantasy or you're just kind of watching, he's only 20. He's only 23 in his last year season, so he's 24 years old.
Yeah, and there's a player on the same team with the same last name, so I feel like Charles Sims and him just get mixed up all the time. Honestly.
Yeah, he just turned 24 this season. I mean, he's young. It was like when the Bills claimed McKenzie and everyone was like, he's not making the right. Like, who's this guy? He's going to return 1 punt. And then they developed him. He doesn't need to play, a huge role with 3 great receivers in front of him and then Gabe Davis. So, quite frankly, it's not like a huge deal to me because he is the 5th receiver. Even if he's above Kumaro, probably not true today. He's
on the depth
receiver.
Chart. I think Kumaro would catch more balls than him. So they're 5th and 6th right there.
Yeah, we'll probably see a lot of Sims on return duties this weekend. Mostly. I'm sure they'll work him into the offense a little bit, but maybe also they try to raise the value of some of the guys they have in house. Maybe work off a trade, because I know a trade is coming. Brandon Beane is making at least one trade before cut downs happen, just because that's the way he does it, and this team is too good to not have people.
It's a D end too. I mean, it's a D end.
It is. It's probably at the end. Yeah. But, comments by Leslie Frazier today have me thinking that maybe it's not Vernon Butler, like a lot of us has been thinking. He says that, they have high plan, and this could be them just trying to sell it to the media so that the media can sell it to the rest of the league. So take everything that coaches say with a grain of salt. But they're saying they have a lot of big plans for him, that he's looked spectacular, that he's completely changed his philosophy of how he approaches practices. Like, these are things that you don't go out of your way to say unless there's a reason for it. So I feel like they actually do plan on keeping Vernon Butler here for the whole season. So if he is not the one on the D line, that's being
any
traded.
money though.
Yeah, you can't cut him. It doesn't make sense to cut him, and you're not going to be able to trade him. Yeah, there's just he's on the team. He's one of those. He's like a Tyler, not a Tyler Croft. What am I saying? Like an AJ Klein or a Tyler Matakevich. I can never say his name.
Well, he's like Croft in the fact that they kept him last year at a fairly decent salary cap number. Same thing with Trent Murphy.
It's not like we're crazily overpaying. It would just be a stupid move. It wouldn't be a good move to cut him. Financially. Not that it's the worst to cut him. There's just really no point in cutting him, and he's a good player.
He's a free player.
Yeah,
he's a free player because you have to keep someone at $750K, whoever that is, and then you're paying him anyways. You're not going to cut Vernon Butler. Trade maybe, because then you can compare the asset and you get the asset out of it, which wouldn't be much. So at that cap level too, and you don't save any extra money trading him like you would with other players. He's on the roster. They're going to sell him, and I think that the theory is that you can sell another defensive lineman, Justin Zimmers of the world. I mean, maybe another guy where you can come in and bring in a 5th round pick, 6th round pick. So I think that's what they do. That's the move they make. They can't no longer do it at the receiver position to me because of the injury with Stevenson. Isaiah Hodgins, is he playing? That's an interesting one. Like, does anyone anyone know the recap on Hodgins? Is he supposed to go? I heard he was, but I don't know if that's true.
I think they're going to try to force him because they want to see him. I don't think he's going to be full bore. But they want to see him because I think it's not just me being a Hodgins fan right now. This is a guy they want him to show why he deserves to be on the roster. They think he has everything to do it. He's flashed here and there. Last year, incredible camp practices when he was healthy, and then this year started hot, had a bit of a decline, ended hot, then gets injured. It's just been a series of unfortunate events with him for injuries, and unfortunately, for a 6th-round pick, that can spell your demise, which, Kevin's brought up, he'll be a high-priority practice squad guy, and I do believe he clears waivers because guys like their own teams. They're not going to take a risk on an injured guy, his second-year injured receiver like Hodgins, but you'll take a risk on a guy like Steven Sims, who has proven he has ability coming into his 3rd year, the second he's cut, Not that I don't think Sims was even a practice squad eligible, but still, I was just throwing it out there.
I get it. And someone else that maybe we haven't talked about the possibility of this player getting cut, and maybe I'm reading too much into the fact that Tywan Jones is a lock for this roster, and maybe reading too much into Reggie Gilliam's involvement in the run game. But preseason week 1, Matt Breida didn't look good. Preseason week 2, he definitely looked better, but that's because he was used as a pass catching back and not a running back. So just between Reggie Gilliam, Tywan Jones, Zach Moss, Devin Singletary, I just don't know if there's room to keep 5 running backs. I know Gilliam's a tight end running back hybrid, but 5 running backs is a lot for this team who could keep 7 receivers, want depth on the defensive line for their rotation, want depth on the offensive line because who knows how effective Deion Dawkins will be. And this offensive line, hate to say it, might not be that great come week 1 to begin with anyways. So Kevin, I know I was driving, I was steering, I had the GPS up for the Matt Breida train. I am now thinking that I'm going to lose the $25. I bet my friend that he would be the Bills scrimmage yards leader, and thinking he could not be on this roster for week 1.
Yeah, it's possible. I don't think it's far-fetched. I mean, for me, it's I love that Sonny Michel. That's why I brought it up a couple times to Mark. Yeah. Is that's what I hope the Bills. Obviously, they're not going to do the last thing they want to do is see him run down their throats, even if the Bills paid a 4th. But that's the kind of deal I'm looking for. If I'm the Bills, I'm looking for a similar type of player who has a pedigree, who the Bills can bring in. I think that's the move that I still think it's a move that they can make. I mean, they've had some running back injuries all season or all off season. Quite frankly, Singletary's the only one who's stayed healthy and performed. There's a need for a running back on this team. It's not a stud lock that those 3 or 4 with Taiwan are the team's running backs. I think that the Bills could go out and make a move, and that would probably spell the end of Matt Breida. I don't know that though. I mean, people seem to love his yards, per carry. They love his, bounce back ability, bounce outside, his ability outside the tackles, some of that kind of stuff. So we'll have to see. But I think running back and tight end are still 2 positions that are very much in play that the Bills could upgrade. I don't see it elsewhere. I mean, corner is another one, but they just haven't been very interested in doing anything at that game ever. So,
now you're talking trades corner. I've been shutting you down all offseason, Kevin, and now you're sounding defeated. And I was going to bring up, I think this is the time we are finally going to be trading for a corner in these next coming weeks. You look at the injury report today. You see the 3 of the top 4 out. I mean, it's just bad. Yeah. Dane Jackson apparently just a stinger, so not out. But Teron Johnson with that hand wrapped today, not doing any physical contact or anything. Then Levi Wallace, I mean, that's 3 straight practices now for him. They just revealed what the injury was today. Could it potentially be something? I know we're still a few weeks out, and we have time to let these guys rest up for sure. It's just practice, but it's definitely a bit concerning because if I know you don't like him, but if Levi Wallace isn't starting,
you gotta like him as your CB2.
We're done. We're done. We are done. We are going to have to put up 50. Which is how I know our secondary is good outside of that. Trey Day, the safeties, all that, but we've harped on it. We have a ton of great depth corners. We have good nickel guys and stuff. Having that pure number 2 across, I miss Josh Norman right now. Josh Norman wasn't bad last year, and not that he was great, but I felt more comfortable with a mix or Josh Norman, Levi Wallace is that one too. So could that veteran guy still be out there? We don't know what's going on with Richard Sherman after that rush up he had a month or so ago. Other guys out there, there are going to be guys who are struggling in camp and stuff where teams aren't going to want to cut them but might start throwing out flyers. I think it's that time of year. So I'm finally agreeing with Kevin for once that I think we do make a move for not for like about the cornerback that we do make the move for corner. If anything, I don't see us adding a running back.
I think it's laughable
they
that
like the guys right now.
Dane Jackson fell off. I mean, it was what it was. He's a 7th round pick who showed some flashes. He's the team's 5th corner. I don't think we can expect anything more than that.
Leslie Frazier's still saying that the battle is up for grabs.
That's just
it's absolutely.
And I'm not a Levi Wallace fan at all. I mean, and that's coach speak. That's blasphemy. I did
the Anchorman I don't believe you gif as soon as I saw that come through.
I think Cam Lewis has a better chance than I think it's done, and I think the team will make. I just don't have any faith that they think they need to do something there. I think they're fairly fine with the top 3, and then they'll go with it as the flow goes. But I think it's an interesting position to always monitor. I mean, they had cornerbacks there to draft, and they went different ways. I mean, it's a high priority off-season position, guys, but I just don't know what they're going to do with it now. And they trust certain players. Maybe they call Josh Norman back. Would make sense. So it's going to be an interesting week, I think. I think it's going to be a really fun and interesting week because I didn't expect these receiver injuries. I didn't expect some maybe movement at running back. And I certainly expected, even not being a Levi fan, I did expect a little bit more solidity under that cornerback room. And I'm certainly not a Saran Neal fan, no matter what anyone tells me about how he had a great coverage but didn't make the finish. Guess what? You can't not finish a play and tell me it was good. I'm sorry. You got dunked on for a 76-yard touchdown.
There's
no rhyme.
It's like the Patriots announcers saying, what a great throw by Mac Jones, even though the receiver didn't catch the ball and the DB got his hands on it first. It's the same thing. Like, right. Yeah. No, obviously, you have a preseason game coming up this weekend. So we'll finish off the show because we do have What's Trainwreck watching. They're talking about What If episode 3. So stay tuned for that. But preseason game against the Packers. A lot of things to watch. Unrelated to the Bills, want to say high school classmate of mine, guy I sat at lunch with, Jake Dolegala, is the 4th quarterback on the Packers depth chart. Could be playing in the stadium he grew up going to NFL games in, this Saturday. So that's a cool thing to watch. Just shout out him, shout out St. Francis. But we got to talk Bills, obviously. That's the reason we're here. We'll go around the room, say one thing we're looking for in the preseason game, one player we're watching, maybe anything, dealer's choice. Kevin, kick this off. Who's one player, one position group, one battle, anything you're definitely playing a keen eye to this weekend?
It's a tough one. I mean, because of the injuries, but I'm continuing to watch that corner room. I mean, we talked about it. It's kind of up. We kind of went into it for all the reasons we just said, but I'm watching that corner room. I want to see if who comes out of it. If we take corner out of it, I mean, I think it's pretty fun to look at those offensive skill players. So between running back receiver combo there, what's going to come out of this and who's going to even be ready? Why I'm watching that isn't because I, care about, because I don't think the Bills have a top 3 receivers. It's because I'm curious to see who's ready week 1 on top of all this. Like, who's going to be ready to go at the receiver room? Think the top 3 are ready to go. Think the 4th is ready in Gabe Davis. But the depth that they had built from 5 to 8 is kind of gone. So I'm just kind of curious to see, what happens now. Like, at least the top 4 are there. So I'm not worried about the high end, but I want to watch the skill players to see if a running back move needs to be made. And I'm always watching corner because I really, unlike receiver, I'm worried about corner. Yeah.
No. Receiver does not make us nervous whatsoever. This offense as a whole, we're confident in that. We know we'll be in the top.
Don't like to see loss of depth at receiver, but not worried about it.
Mm-hmm. Josh Allen's the kind of guy that elevates the players around him, is what we've seen. So, definitely not worried about that. He can make any receiver at least passable. Meerkat, what are you going to look for against the Packers on Saturday?
Well, I got to shout out to the Packers, too. Maybe part of the reason Dolegala's over there. Shout out to Clarence High School Wall of Famer, Mark Murphy, CEO of the Green Bay Packers. Go Red Devils, baby. But other than that, I got my eyes peeled on safety. I've been talking about it since the first week of the preseason with you guys because last year, I think opening day roster, we only went into last season with 3 safeties, which is Hyde, Poyer, and Jaquan Johnson. We cut Dean Marlowe and Josh Thomas. Or didn't cut Dean Marlowe. What am I saying? Wait. Did we start with Dean Marlowe on the seat to begin last year, the first game?
Then he got caught. He got cut and brought back week 1.
That's okay. That's where I'm mixing up. But still, so they've cut 3 or 4 receivers this whole safeties. I'm all over the place after one little mistake, and their whole regime. And now we have 5 quality safeties. They like Jaquan Johnson, special teamer, a nice depth guy, a bit athletic. They like him, but now he hasn't done much this offseason. And you have DeMar Hamlin, who you drafted, making plays, and you have Josh Thomas, who I've been in love with. He's my offseason darling. So there's no way they keep 5 safeties. There's going to be somebody who this team likes getting cut between those 3 with Johnson and Hamlin and Thomas. And I'm going to keep my eye on Thomas again. Hamlin, maybe practice squatted. Jaquan Johnson, as much as it would kill me, maybe cut. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does have the knee injury right now, so that unfortunately does maybe spell bad news for Jaquan Johnson. Yeah, right. That's it. The healthy players make the rosters. It's like we saw in the NBA playoffs last year. The healthy teams made it to the finals. That's just how these things go sometimes. It's unfortunate.
And the Bills put a precedent on that too, guys. I mean, it's a simple why don't the Bills have such limited minutes missed? Because that's how they build their roster. At some point, if you don't play like John Brown's good. If you don't play,
he's a very good player. Yeah.
Sorry. We're going to try Sanders, who never misses games.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of missing games, the people that I'm looking at are the offensive linemen this weekend against the Packers. We could be seeing Josh Allen in it for the first part of the game. We don't know yet. Obviously, we'll be talking about that more as we get that knowledge. Maybe by tomorrow night's episode of the Folding Roundtable, we will know so that we can talk about that. But I do want to see how some of these guys on the offensive line look. Cody Ford has looked all right as a guard so far in the preseason. I want to see that continue. I expect him to look good as a guard in the preseason. That's the bare minimum. I expect him to do the bare minimum. I don't give people credit for that. But I'm also going to keep an eye on Tommy Doyle because I think that, I think our tackle room could be made up of 2 rookies and 2 veterans between Darrell Williams, Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, and Tommy Doyle. If obviously Spencer Brown has looked damn good. He matched up against Khalil Mack. He held his own. He held his own against one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Tommy Doyle has looked decent in the limited action we've seen him. So, I'm excited to see that. If we can be confident in those 2 and axe Bobby Hart before the preseason game, man, oh man, will I be a happy guy. I know all of Bills Mafia will be too. But that'll be it for us here today on the Crowd Assist podcast. We will be back, Kevin, Meerkat, and myself tomorrow night on the Folding Roundtable. We will announce the roster for that later tonight. Won't tease it, but half of the New York Upstate crew is going to join, whether it's Prino or Talbot. I'll let you guys figure that out later. But stay tuned for What's Trainwreck Watching. Thank you to Mark Schofield. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks, Meerkat. And thank you all of our listeners, Picasso's, and Outlet Liquor. Good night.